Hey there, and welcome to a deep dive into something that's really got my attention lately.
Mm.
MUMEx,
MUMEx, yeah.
Multi-Universes Music Exploration.
Mhm.
And from what I can tell from episode 4 of their series, this is going to like change how we think about music.
Really change it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a whole new cosmology of sound, right? Like they're drawing inspiration from chaos theory, bird flocks, even the way trees grow.
Mm.
Wild stuff.
It's amazing how MUMEx finds these like unexpected connections, right,
Yeah.
between music and the natural world. It really makes you think about like what even is music? How do we define it?
Right. And I've always thought of music as this beautiful, organized thing. But then you bring in something like chaos theory, and
Mm.
suddenly you're talking about randomness and unpredictability being musical elements.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
not just about like throwing in random notes to be cool or whatever. It's about understanding how randomness, how these elements actually exist in nature, and then figuring out ways to translate those principles into like a musical language, you know?
So it's like controlled chaos in a way, like
Yeah.
using algorithms or something to introduce elements of surprise,
Yeah.
but still maintaining a sense of structure.
Exactly. It's like this really delicate balance. And one of the ways MUMEX explores this is through this thing called the macro basic array.
The macro basic array.
Yeah, it's a system developed by the composer Steve Coleman. Have you heard of him?
Yeah. So, okay, the macro basic array, it's like a set of guidelines or building blocks that musicians can use to create their own structures.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And what's really cool is it pulls inspiration from a bunch of different musical traditions, from jazz to African music to contemporary classical. So it's not like trying to tell you what kind of music to make, but it gives you this framework, for exploring.
So it's more like a toolbox, not a rule book.
Exactly.
You've got the freedom to experiment and improvise,
Right.
but you're working within this underlying structure.
Yeah, and that's where, like, the real magic happens, It's that balance between structure and spontaneity. You can build these complex musical ideas, but there's always room for, those magical moments of improvisation.
It's like a musical safety net, right?
Yes.
But it also doubles as a trampoline for your creativity,
I love that. That's a good one.
which leads to the question of like, how does this actually work in practice? How do you go from this idea of a structured array to incorporating elements of like bird flocks or tree structures, which I read about in the source material? How did that work?
Okay, so think about how birds move in a flock.
Okay.
There's no one leader, right? But they move with this like incredible cohesion. They're constantly adjusting their position in relation to the birds around them.
Like this like sixth sense or something.
Yeah.
An intuitive understanding
Yeah.
of how to move as one.
Yes, and we can apply that to music. Imagine a bunch of musicians all responding to each other's playing, right? You get this like intricate sonic tapestry ebbing and flowing with this like crazy fluidity.
So instead of just focusing on their individual parts, they become like hyper aware of the entire musical ecosystem. They create something greater than themselves.
Yes, and think about trees now.
Okay.
A tree's branches, they grow out from the trunk, right?
Yeah.
Creating this like network of interconnected pathways, the macro basic array, it's kind of like that.
Okay, I see where you're going with this. So the trunk, that's like the core elements of the array, and the branches are the different musical paths that musicians can explore.
Exactly. And within those branches, you have even more subdivisions, just like a tree has twigs and leaves, right?
Right.
So it's this system of organization that allows for like these big picture structures, but also incredibly detailed moments.
It's like they've looked at nature's design and said, yeah, let's apply that to music.
Totally.
Which makes you wonder what else we can learn from nature
Yeah.
and how we can use that in our creative process.
Absolutely. And that leads perfectly into MUMEX's approach to sound synthesis, something they call MUMEX organic synthesis.
Okay, now we're talking. This is where it gets good. From what I gathered, it's like they said, forget the old ways of creating sound. What if we think of sound waves more like these evolving fractal entities?
Exactly. They're changing how we even think about sound at like a fundamental level.
Yeah.
Instead of starting with these basic static waveforms that we're used to, MUMEX organic synthesis uses complex, always changing waveforms generated by something called a fluctuating fractal oscillator.
Fluctuating fractal oscillator. Now that's a mouthful. What is that?
Well, I know, right? It sounds like something out of Star Trek.
It does.
But it's based on real science, which is cool. Essentially, it's a type of oscillator. It's something that produces sound waves.
Right.
But this one is designed to be more like what we find in nature.
Yeah.
Complex and unpredictable.
Okay, so instead of these clean, predictable sound waves, it's creating something more organic and evolving, like the sound of wind through leaves or water in a stream, stuff like that.
Exactly. And that's where the fractal comes in. Fractals are these infinitely complex patterns that repeat at different scales. Like you see them everywhere in nature, right? From coastlines to snowflakes, even the way trees branch out.
Right.
And the sound waves from this fractal oscillator, they have that same kind of depth and complexity.
It's like they've zoomed in on the microscopic details of sound and found this whole universe of possibilities.
I like that, like a sonic microscope.
Right. And they're not just making these sounds randomly, they're using math to do it, like mathematical models to analyze and replicate how things behave in nature.
Yeah.
So they could like study how leaves vibrate in the wind and turn that into an algorithm that generates the sound of rustling leaves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like they're using math and science to figure out nature's sound design secrets.
Okay, now that is music to my ears. But how do they actually use these sounds in music? That's what I want to know.
That's where the MUMEx Cosmic Audio FX processor comes in.
Cosmic Audio FX processor.
Yeah, they've made this tool that lets you like play with these sounds in ways you couldn't before.
Okay, now you're speaking my language.
Yeah.
Sonic manipulation. Sign me up. So what can this thing do? Does it make everything sound like spacey?
It can, but it's way more than just like a spacey reverb. It's like, imagine you've got these sounds, these really intricate evolving sounds, and you can get in there at like a microscopic level.
Okay, now I'm really interested. Tell me more.
So one of the things they do is micro loop fluctuation, which is basically where they take these tiny pieces of sound and loop them.
Okay.
But the loops are always changing, like the speed and the pitch are shifting all the time.
So it's like those repeating phrases you hear in minimalist music,
Yeah.
but with this organic variation, so it's not like too repetitive.
Exactly. And then they have this other thing, glitch reconstruction.
Glitch reconstruction.
This is where it gets really interesting. They take these sounds and chop them up even more, so you get these unexpected like jumps and stutters.
This is like controlled chaos, but with sound. You know, those old records with scratches.
Exactly.
But instead of being like a mistake, it's a tool.
And of course they use granular synthesis, but it's different with MUMEx.
Different how?
They use it to create these textures, you know, evolving, kind of swirling textures.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's really nothing else like it.
It's like painting with sound.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so this Cosmic Audio FX processor sounds amazing. But what about actually playing music? Can you use it live? Or is it just for the studio?
That's a great question, and that leads to the MUMEx 6024 synth.
Ooh, a synth. I'm listening.
Yeah, so imagine a synth that has like the best of analog
Okay.
and the best of digital.
The best of both worlds.
Yeah.
But does it use that same organic synthesis stuff we were talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. So it has the fluctuating fractal oscillator at its core.
Wow.
So you still get those super complex sounds.
So it's not just trying to sound like a piano or something. It's making totally new sounds inspired by, nature and chaos theory.
Yeah.
You got it. But what really makes this synth different is that it can actually control lights and video.
Hold on. Are you saying this synth can make a light show?
Yeah. Like a visual light show that's in sync with the music.
Wow. So as you're playing, you're making the music and the visual.
Exactly. They've built that right into the instrument.
That is next level. It makes me think of those like psychedelic light shows from back in the day.
Yeah.
But this is like integrated with the music.
Totally. And it all connects to synesthesia, which we talked about earlier.
Right. We hear a sound and see a color.
Yeah. So MUMEx has actually made a system where different musical intervals have different colors.
So as the music changes key, the colors change too.
Exactly.
It's like seeing music or hearing colors.
It's about creating a more complete experience for the listener.
Wow. And speaking of complete experiences, I was reading about this thing called Q synthesis.
Oh, yeah.
It sounds like some next level sound design.
It really is. It uses quantum mechanics to make these really complex sounds, and they're always changing. Okay, now we're getting into some really complex stuff. Quantum mechanics. How does that even work with music?
Okay, so think of a musical note.
Okay.
But instead of just being one sound, it could be like many different sounds at the same time.
Like it's in multiple universes.
Kind of. It only becomes one specific sound when you hear it.
Whoa. So you're saying that every time you listen to it, it could be different.
Yeah. Every performance is different because it's based on probability.
So it's like each performance is totally unique.
Exactly.
That's incredible.
Huh.
But would we even be able to hear those subtle changes?
That's a good question, and it's something that MUMEx is researching right now.
So we don't even know if our ears can keep up with these sounds.
It's possible. That's what's so exciting about MUMEx. They're not just changing music, they're changing how we even understand sound.
Yeah, it's like next level stuff. And it's not just about the small details. They're thinking about bigger things too, like the Earth.
Exactly.
So we've talked about all this incredible stuff. Chaos theory, bird flocks, even quantum mechanics. It's amazing.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. But there's one more thing we haven't really gotten into, and it's about tuning.
Tuning.
Yeah, no, it sounds kind of basic after all that other stuff.
Right.
But it's actually really fascinating, trust me.
Okay, I'm listening.
So tell me about this whole 438.48 hertz thing.
Okay, so you know how we tune to A440 hertz now?
Yeah, that's like the standard.
Well, it wasn't always the standard, and some people think it shouldn't be.
Really?
Yeah, like in the Baroque period, they tuned lower, around 415.
So there's not really a right way to tune.
It depends on the music, the instruments, even the time period.
Makes sense. But why did we switch to 440 then?
It's a long story, but basically it was about trying to standardize things.
So everyone's on the same page.
Exactly. But it might be limiting us too.
Oh.
That's where 438.48 hertz comes in. People who use it believe it's more in tune with nature.
Nature.
Yeah, like the Earth's natural frequency, the Schumann resonance.
Okay, remind me what that is again.
So the Earth, it's like it has this electromagnetic heartbeat, right?
A heartbeat?
Yeah, a really low frequency, around 7.83 hertz. And some people think it affects us, like calms us down.
Interesting. So how does this connect to 438.48 hertz?
438.48 is a harmonic of that frequency. So it's like vibrating in sync with the Earth.
Wow. So we're not just making music, we're like joining in on the Earth's symphony.
It's a cool way to think about it.
It is. But how do you even tune to that? My instruments are all set up for 440.
Yeah, it takes some adjusting. Sometimes you can just tweak the tuning,
Okay.
but other times you need to modify the instrument itself.
Whoa, serious dedication.
MUMEx is all about exploring these possibilities. There's 6024 synth. You can actually switch between 440 and 438.48.
So you can experiment and see what you like.
Exactly.
That's amazing. So MUMEx isn't just making cool sounds, it's making us rethink how we even approach music.
Absolutely. It's about challenging what we know and seeing what else is out there.
And I have to say, after learning all this, I don't think I can listen to music the same way again.
I neither.
It's like you've opened up a whole new universe of sound.
There's so much to explore.
There really is. And who knows, maybe one day we'll all be tuning to the Earth's frequency.
It's a beautiful thought.
It is. Well, that's about all the time we have for today's deep dive into the incredible world of MUMEx.
This was fun.
It was. We've covered a lot, but hopefully it's inspired you to go out and explore the amazing world of sound for yourselves.
Keep an open mind.
Exactly. There's always more to discover. Until next time.